I think we can all relate to being in a real estate transaction where you're trying to sell a house or trying to purchase something, and the process is just dragging on forever. Well, today I'm going to be talking about four of the biggest things that I see that really end up slowing down the process when you're trying to sell your house. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska with Keller Williams, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today, we're going to be really diving into some of these things that really do take a long time, and it's just something that, one, you can do something about, or two, it's also just understanding, hey, this is going to be just the reality of the situation, and we're just going to be ready going into it. Before we get started, though, give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's go and jump into today's topic. Now, the first thing that I would say is if your property is super remote, then chances are it's going to take a little while if it's going to be financed. And what I mean by that is if you have just a remote cabin out in the middle of nowhere and it's an all-cash deal, then it's probably not going to take very long to actually close on it. If it's a remote house, though, and we have to have an inspector go out there, we have to have an appraiser go out there, and we need to have surveyors go out there to make sure the property boundaries are where they're supposed to be, then that's going to take a little bit longer just because it does take longer to get people out when you have a remote property, which, makes sense. If your property is way out there somewhere, then that is just what it's going to be. And we'll just deal with it and just know that it's probably going to take a little bit longer to get stuff like that done. The second thing that can really take a long time, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is if you have a well and a septic and not knowing where the pipes are and it's wintertime. So when you do that, it's going to be a challenge to find those pipes because unfortunately what a lot of people will do, or what some people do, is they don't like the side of the pipes just sticking up out of the ground. It looks unsightly and, oh, I've got these pipes that are just sticking out of my yard. And what a lot of people will do is they'll actually just cut them down like almost to the grass. So pretty much down to like the ground level. They completely forget where it's at, which is not great because when we're going to sell it, we have to access those pipes and we have no idea where it's at. And then you add 3 or 4 feet of snow and ice on top of it, and you can see how that would really slow down the process. The engineer is going to have a general idea where they're at just using the as-built, but it is not the engineer's job who's going to be looking at the septic or the well to find where your pipes are. Okay, he's not a manual laborer. His job is not to go out there and chip through 6 inches worth of ice because you didn't get a little flag out there and stick it in there to make it a lot easier to find it. So I've seen making that mistake drag out the entire deal probably about a week or two just because we couldn't find the pipes and we can't go anywhere. we can't move forward in the transaction if the lender has no idea what's going on with the well and septic system. So that would be one of the biggest things that I see slowing the process down. Now, let's go and take a break real quick here. For those of you who've been watching for a while, you do know that I have a seller guide for those of you who are considering getting your property on the market in the near future here. If that's something that would interest you, go to my website. Link for that is in the description section down below. Register and then put seller guide in the little comment section so I know what to send you. Now, let's go and finish up with today talking about the other 2 things that I've seen that really slows down the real estate transactions. Now, number 3 is really something that can cause a lot of stress for everybody in the entire transaction, and that is making the inspector or the appraiser have to come back a second time. Now, what happens here is, like, let's say we have an agreement on what stuff is going to get repaired. The inspector goes out there for a re-inspection, or a contractor or whoever, and they see, hey, this wasn't repaired or this wasn't done correctly. Usually it's just a matter of like the seller forgetting something on the list and not printing it out and then just physically checking the stuff off. Because if you do that, it's pretty difficult to miss anything. But when you're just trying to remember everything off the top of your head, you're gonna forget stuff. And that's why I always recommend, hey, print it off and make sure that you're actually checking this stuff. So that would be the big thing. Number 1, we want to make sure that everything has been done on that inspection list because it's going to slow everything down. If the inspector comes out, he sees it's not done. Okay, well, now it's got to be done. And now you need to take the time to do it. And then we need to schedule a time for the inspector to come back. And by the way, the second time the inspector has to come back because you as the seller forgot to do something, then that is going to be an expense for you. And it's usually about $100, $200 to have the inspector go back out there. So it's really to your best interest to make sure that you print out the list of repairs we agreed to and physically check them off just to make sure we've got everything. Conversely, if the appraiser has to go back out there for the second time, then that's going to slow the entire thing down because obviously we can't move forward until we have an appraisal. And really what I've seen that can slow things down is not making the entire property available to the appraiser. So if you have any bedrooms in your house that are locked, you need to make sure those are unlocked. If you have a garage, like a workshop or something like that, you need to make sure that that's unlocked. If you have a utility room, like let's say you have a fourplex or something like that, you need to make sure the utility room is accessible because they have no way, they shouldn't just take you at your word that, oh yeah, it's all good to go. Like, no, they shouldn't take anyone's word for that. They need to go verify that. And also, if you have a fourplex, obviously they're going to need to go check out all of the units. So it's not an option for one of the tenants to just be like, no, you can't come in. It's like, well, no, we absolutely will be coming in and be giving you that 24-hour notice, but no, we are definitely going to be coming in. So yeah, those are going to be two big ones that can slow the entire process down. And of all the ones we've been talking about, it's probably like these two, making the inspector, making the appraiser go back out there. These delays usually cause the most stress just because by the time we're at this point in the process, then we're at the end, emotions are, this is going to be when people are most tense, because we're getting to the end of the transaction and there's a lot of moving parts at this point. So make sure you take these steps and it's going to make the process go a lot better than otherwise. All right, the fourth thing that I've seen that can really slow down the entire process, and I'm sure I'm going to catch some heat from some people about this, but if you are using a lender who's from like a big corporate company that's outside of the state of Alaska, sometimes that can really slow down the entire process. And the reason that is because, number one, they may or may not understand what's considered normal in the state of Alaska. Like if they're looking at septic tanks or they're looking at a well or something like that, they might have no clue, what's actually normal and what's not up here. But they'll have some kind of corporate guideline somewhere that they'll have to go search through in the bureaucracy that's going to make it, that may or may not actually apply to the systems that are up here. Plus, communicating with people in these larger corporations can be a bit of a headache sometimes because, number one, they're usually going to be in a completely different time zone. So that makes communication a little difficult right off the bat. And then it also becomes a little bit more difficult because if we're trying to communicate with them, then you're trying to communicate with the bureaucracy and then they hear something, then they need to go talk to somebody else. And then you can see how this can start taking a long, long time. And our ability to actually communicate just one-on-one with with the lender is going to be problematic, and it can really end up drawing out the entire process just because we can't really communicate very effectively with the lender. So what this means for you as a seller, if you see two offers come in, all things even, and one is with the local lender and the other one is from one of these big national chains, I'm not going to tell you which one to take. I'm just going to say there is usually a lot of pros and cons either way. And when you're looking at the cons for the national one, the communication and the fact that it might slow things down and you're probably going to have a couple goofy requirements come up that may or may not be necessary, is definitely going to be something you need to factor in when you're deciding which offer to go with. So these are going to be the four big things that can slow down a real estate transaction. I sure hope it's been useful for you. If it has, give this video a like and we'll see you next time.